Jason shook his head. The funds aren't misallocated. They're in escrow, held temporarily while we finalize permits and contracts. It's standard procedure for a project like this. But Victor isn't interested in the truth. He's interested in creating doubt and leveraging it to his advantage. Emma felt a wave of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a lingering unease. Why would he come to me, though? I'm new here. I don't have any power. Jason stood, walking around the desk to face her. Because you're new, Emma. You don't know the full history of the Foundation yet, which makes you an easy target for manipulation. Victor likely thought he could plant seeds of doubt in you and use you to destabilize us from the inside. Emma felt a surge of indignation. Well, he miscalculated. I came straight to you because I believe in what this foundation stands for. But Jason, if he's willing to go this far, what else might he try? Jason smiled faintly, clearly impressed by her resolve. That's why I brought you on board, Emma. You're sharp, and you don't let people push you around. But you're right. Victor doesn't give up easily. He'll keep digging, looking for cracks. We have to be ready for him. How? Emma asked, her voice steady but curious. Jason's expression darkened slightly. By making sure there are no cracks to exploit. I'll review our financials again, just to be certain everything is airtight. In the meantime, I want you to focus on the community center project. If we keep delivering on our promises, Victor won't have anything to stand on. Emma nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I won't let him get to me. Jason placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I know you won't. You've already proven you're tougher than most. But keep your guard up, Emma. People like Victor don't just walk away when their first plan fails. She left Jason's office feeling both reassured and uneasy. Victor Hayes wasn't just some meddling outsider. He was a serious threat. And while Jason seemed confident in their ability to handle him, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than either of them realized. Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into her work, determined to make the community center project a success. She met with architects, local leaders, and potential donors, carefully balancing the needs of the neighborhood with the foundation's resources. But no matter how focused she tried to be, Victor Hayes lingered in the back of her mind. Her suspicions deepened when she noticed a man loitering near the foundation's offices. He was tall, dressed in a nondescript suit, and seemed to always be just out of earshot during her meetings. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, but when she saw him again at a coffee shop near the office, she knew something was wrong. Emma decided to confront him. She approached him as he sat at a table, pretending to scroll through his phone. "Excuse me," she said, her tone sharp. "Can I help you with something?" The man looked up, clearly startled but trying to play it cool. "I don't know what you mean." "You've been hanging around the foundation all week," Emma said, crossing her arms. "Who are you, and what do you want?" He hesitated, glancing around as if checking for witnesses. Finally, he sighed and leaned closer. "Look, I'm just doing my job. Victor Hayes sent me." Emma's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression neutral. "Why?" The man shrugged. "He's keeping tabs on the project, wants to know if there's anything he can use." "Well, there isn't," Emma said firmly, "so you can tell him to back off." The man smirked, his confidence returning. "You're new to this game, aren't you? Victor doesn't back off. If there's nothing to use, he'll create something." Emma's heart pounded, but she refused to show fear. "We'll see about that." She turned and walked away, her mind racing. It was clear that Victor was escalating his efforts, and she needed to act fast. But how could she stop someone as powerful and relentless as Victor Hayes? Back at the office, she confided in Jason, recounting the encounter with the man at the coffee shop. Jason listened intently, his jaw tightening as she spoke. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said. "Victor's not just trying to undermine the foundation, he's trying to intimidate you." Emma shook her head. "I'm not scared of him, but I am worried about what he might do next." Jason nodded. So am I. But we're not going to let him win. I'll reach out to some contacts and see if we can get more information on his plans. In the meantime, stay focused on the project. The best way to beat Victor is to keep moving forward. Emma agreed, but as she returned to her desk, she couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was spiraling out of control. Victor Hayes was more dangerous than she had realized, and if they weren't careful, he could destroy everything they were working to build. The man straightened slightly, his expression hardening. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice rising just enough to cut through the silence. "You're denying me service because of what I'm wearing? That's discrimination." Emily squared her shoulders, refusing to back down. "We are well within our rights, sir. This is a private business, and we have policies in place to maintain a welcoming environment for everyone." The man chuckled dryly, shaking his head. "Wow," he said, his voice laced with disbelief. "You managed to turn basic customer service into a power trip. Do you treat all your longtime clients like this, or am I just special?" Emily felt her patience wearing thin, but she refused to let it show. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave. If you don't comply, I'll have no choice but to involve security." The man leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a lower, sharper tone. "You might want to think carefully about what you're doing," he said, "because if you're about to kick me out, I guarantee this won't end the way you think it will." Emily didn't flinch. "Alex," she called, signaling to the security guard stationed near the entrance. "Please escort this gentleman out." Alex, a tall and broad-shouldered man with a generally intimidating presence, hesitated. His eyes darted between Emily and the man, and his posture betrayed a reluctance to get involved. The man noticed this and smirked. "Smart guy," he muttered under his breath. "Alex, now," Emily ordered, her voice sharp. With a sigh, Alex approached the man. "Sir," he began, his tone measured, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." The man didn't move at first. He stared at Emily, his smirk fading into a serious, almost calculating expression. Then slowly, he stepped back. "All right," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'll leave, but you're making a mistake." He adjusted his cap, turned on his heel, and began walking toward the exit. Just as he reached the door, he stopped and looked back over his shoulder. "You'll remember this moment," he said quietly, his words carrying an unsettling weight. "I guarantee it." And with that, he was gone. The silence in the lobby was deafening. Emily exhaled slowly, adjusting her blazer and trying to shake the unease that had settled in her chest. "Back to work, everyone," she said briskly, her voice cutting through the tension like a whip. The employees hurriedly returned to their tasks, but the atmosphere remained heavy. Emily returned to her desk, her heels clicking against the floor. She told herself she had done the right thing, that she had upheld the bank's policies and maintained order. But as she sat down and picked up her pen, she realized her hand was trembling slightly. For the first time in her career, Emily Sharp felt the faintest flicker of doubt, but she quickly pushed it aside. The problem had walked out the door, and as far as she was concerned, the matter was closed, or so she thought. The following day, Horizon Bank opened its doors as usual, the morning rush of customers filing in and employees settling into their routines. Yet, an undercurrent of unease lingered, an intangible tension hanging over the staff like a storm cloud. Whispers circulated among the employees about the incident the previous day. While some defended Emily's decision, others were uneasy, quietly wondering if the situation could have been handled differently. Emily arrived punctual as always, her sharp heels clicking across the floor with their usual authority. She noticed the murmurs but dismissed them. She had a branch to run, and yesterday's event was just another hiccup in her otherwise flawless record. As far as she was concerned, the man in the red cap was a minor distraction, nothing more. Around midday, as the morning bustle gave way to the lull of lunch hour, the glass doors of the bank swung open. Two men entered, their presence commanding immediate attention. They were dressed in tailored suits that screamed power and influence, their confident strides causing heads to turn. The air in the bank shifted instantly. It was as though their very presence had drained the oxygen from the room. The taller of the two men, with salt and pepper hair and a polished demeanor, walked directly toward Emily's desk. The other stayed near the entrance, his sharp gaze scanning the room like a hawk surveying its territory. Emily, momentarily caught off guard, rose from her seat and greeted the man with her usual professionalism. "Good afternoon," Emily said, forcing a polite smile. "How can I assist you today?" The man's lips curved into a faint smile, though his eyes remained unreadable. "Miss Sharp," he began, his voice smooth but carrying an edge of authority. "We need to have a word with you. Please follow me to the conference room." Emily blinked, her mind racing. What could this possibly be about? Was it related to the previous day? She quickly dismissed the thought. Surely it couldn't be. Regardless, she nodded, maintaining her composure. "Of course," she said, gesturing for him to lead the way. The man turned on his heel, and Emily followed, her confidence wavering ever so slightly. As they walked through the hallway, the muffled sounds of hushed conversations from her employees followed them like a shadow. Reaching the conference room, the man opened the door and stepped aside, allowing Emily to enter first. As soon as she stepped inside, she froze. Sitting at the head of the table was the man from yesterday, the same man she had ordered out of the bank. Gone were the faded jeans and casual t-shirt. In their place was a perfectly tailored suit, and his entire demeanor radiated authority. The red cap was nowhere to be seen, but the intensity of his presence was unmistakable. The man smiled faintly, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Good afternoon, Miss Sharp," he said, his tone calm yet charged with an unspoken weight. "Please have a seat." Emily hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. Her mind scrambled to process the situation, but she quickly forced herself to regain her composure. She took the seat, straightening her posture as if to shield herself from whatever was about to come. The man leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped together. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," he said, his voice steady and deliberate. "My name is Richard Langston. I'm the CEO and majority owner of Horizon Financial Group, which, as I'm sure you're aware, owns this branch." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. Her stomach dropped, and for a moment, she couldn't find her voice. The realization of who this man was, coupled with the events of the previous day, sent a jolt of dread coursing through her. She began, but Richard raised a hand, silencing her. "Please, allow me to finish," he said, his tone polite but firm. "Yesterday, I came into this branch as a customer. I didn't announce who I was because I wanted to see how your team operated, how you treated people. What I experienced was enlightening." Emily's cheeks flushed, a rare crack in her icy exterior. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but once again, Richard cut her off. "I was dressed casually," he continued, his gaze piercing. "I didn't look like the typical client you're used to serving, and you made an assumption about me based on my appearance. Not only did you refuse to provide the service I requested, but you did so with a tone and attitude that were, quite frankly, unprofessional." "Mr. Langston," Emily finally managed to interject, her voice shaky, "I was simply trying to uphold the bank's policies. I felt that the situation could potentially disrupt the comfort of other customers." Richard tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Is that so?" he asked. "And did you consider for even a moment that the discomfort you caused to one customer might outweigh whatever hypothetical disruption you were trying to prevent?" Emily hesitated, the weight of his words pressing down on her. I thought I was acting in the best interest of the bank." Richard leaned forward, his voice dropping to a lower, more serious tone. "Miss Sharp, this institution prides itself on treating every customer with respect and dignity, regardless of their appearance, beliefs, or background. What you demonstrated yesterday was not in line with those values. In fact, it was the complete opposite." Emily's chest tightened. I made a judgment call, she said weakly. I thought, that's the problem, Richard interrupted, his voice sharp. You thought you had the right to make a decision that went against the very principles this bank was built on. And in doing so, you jeopardized the reputation of this branch, and by extension, the entire organization. Emily felt her grip on the situation slipping further. I understand, she said quietly, though the words felt hollow even to her. Richard's expression softened slightly, but his tone remained resolute. Miss Sharp, I've reviewed your performance record, and while you've certainly achieved results, I cannot overlook what happened yesterday. Effective immediately, your employment with Horizon Bank is terminated. The words hung in the air like a guillotine. Emily's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she was too stunned to speak. Terminated, she whispered, as if saying it aloud would make it less real. Yes, Richard confirmed, standing up. You'll receive your final paycheck along with instructions for collecting your belongings. I trust you'll leave the premises by the end of the day. Emily's mind raced, but there was nothing she could say or do. She nodded stiffly, her face pale, and rose from her seat. Without another word, she left the conference room, her heels clicking against the floor like a metronome marking the end of her career. Back in the main lobby, the atmosphere was electric. Employees whispered furiously, their eyes darting between Emily and the closed conference room door. Word of what had happened spread quickly, and by the time Emily walked out of the building, her head held high, despite the humiliation burning inside her. Everyone knew the truth. As the glass doors closed behind her, Emily realized that the man she had dismissed so easily wasn't just another difficult customer. He had been her ultimate test, and she had failed spectacularly. The silence in the bank lobby after Emily's exit was deafening, broken only by the occasional shuffling of papers or muted whispers. The staff, stunned by the sudden downfall of their once intimidating branch manager, avoided making eye contact with Richard Langston, who stepped out of the conference room with an air of calm authority. His presence still lingered like a shadow, commanding the attention of everyone in the room without a word. Richard walked toward the main counter, his measured steps echoing against the tiled floor. He glanced around, taking in the tense expressions of the employees. It was clear they were unsure how to proceed in the wake of Emily's termination. Sensing the unease, he spoke, his voice steady but laced with an unmistakable authority. "Good afternoon, everyone," Richard began, his gaze sweeping across the room. "I'm sure many of you have questions about what just happened. Let me clarify something right now. My actions today were not meant to punish, but to uphold the values this institution stands for." The staff exchanged hesitant glances, unsure of how to respond. Richard continued, his tone softening but still firm. Horizon Bank has always prided itself on inclusivity, respect, and fairness. These aren't just words we put on a mission statement. They're principles we live by. Yesterday, I came here as a customer, not as your CEO, to see how those principles are being upheld. What I witnessed fell far short of our standards. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Many employees had seen the incident with Emily unfold, but had been too afraid to speak up. Now, they wondered if they too were being judged for their silence. Richard, sensing their discomfort, smiled faintly. "I'm not here to reprimand anyone else. If anything, yesterday's events were a wake-up call, a reminder of the importance of treating every individual who walks through these doors with dignity, regardless of their appearance, background, or beliefs." One of the tellers, a younger employee named Claire, hesitated before speaking up. Her voice was timid but sincere. "Mr. Langston, I wanted to say something yesterday, but I didn't know if it was my place." Richard turned his attention to her, his expression kind. "Thank you for sharing that, Claire. And let me be clear. It's always your place to speak up when you see something that goes against our values. Courage is what drives positive change, even in difficult moments." Claire nodded, encouraged by his response, and the other employees seemed to relax slightly. Richard's demeanor shifted the energy in the room, from tense to reflective, as if his words had given everyone permission to reassess their own roles in upholding the bank's standards. After a pause, Richard spoke again. "Now, I know this has been an unsettling day, but I want you all to understand something important. This branch has immense potential. You're part of a team that can set an example for what excellence in customer service looks like. It starts with accountability, and it starts with all of you." The staff straightened their postures, their expressions more determined. Richard's words weren't just a lecture. They felt like a challenge, an invitation to rise above the mistakes of the past. As he turned to leave, Richard added, "If anyone has concerns, suggestions, or simply wants to talk, my door is always open. Let's move forward together." With that, he exited the lobby, leaving behind a room of employees who felt, for the first time in a long time, like they were part of something bigger than just a paycheck. Later that afternoon, Richard sat in his corner office on the top floor of Horizon Bank's headquarters. The sun cast golden rays through the expansive windows, but his focus was on the stack of papers in front of him. Among them were reports on the branch's performance, employee evaluations, and customer feedback. He flipped through the documents methodically, his mind replaying the events of the past 2 days. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he said without looking up. The door opened, and Claire stepped inside, clutching a small notebook to her chest. She looked nervous but determined, her eyes meeting Richard's with a mix of respect and apprehension. "Mr. Langston," she began, her voice steady despite her obvious nerves. "Thank you for allowing me to speak earlier. I've been thinking about what you said, and I wanted to share an idea." Richard gestured for her to take a seat. "Of course, Claire. What's on your mind?" She sat down, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I think what happened yesterday highlights the need for better training, not just on customer service, but on empathy and understanding. Maybe we could develop a program that focuses on how to handle difficult situations without bias. It could help ensure something like this doesn't happen again." Richard regarded her thoughtfully, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "That's an excellent idea, Claire. A proactive approach like that could make a real difference, not just in your branch, but across the entire company." Encouraged, Claire continued, "I'd be happy to help design the program, if you think it's worth pursuing." Richard leaned back in his chair, nodding. "I think it's more than worth pursuing. Let's collaborate on this. Your initiative is exactly what this organization needs." Claire beamed, her confidence visibly growing. "Thank you, Mr. Langston. I won't let you down." As she left the office, Richard felt a sense of optimism. The incident with Emily had been a difficult moment for the branch, but it had also opened the door for growth and improvement. Employees like Claire reminded him why he had chosen to take on the responsibility of running Horizon Bank: to create an environment where people could thrive, both customers and staff alike. Turning back to his desk, Richard made a note to schedule a company-wide meeting to discuss Claire's proposed program. He knew that real change started with leadership, and he was determined to lead by example. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Richard felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to navigate it with integrity and a commitment to the values that had guided him throughout his career. Horizon Bank had weathered its fair share of storms, but with the right leadership and a united team, its future had never looked brighter. As evening fell over Horizon Bank, Richard Langston prepared for what he knew would be a pivotal step forward. After the day's events, his decision to launch an empathy training program was just the beginning. He had already called a meeting with the regional managers, determined to address the broader issues within the company's culture. Sitting at his desk, Richard drafted his notes, his pen moving with purpose. He wanted to strike the right tone, one that acknowledged the challenges, but also inspired action. The events at the branch highlighted systemic issues, not just individual failings. and it was his responsibility as CEO to address them head-on. The next morning, Horizon Bank's corporate boardroom buzzed with energy as the regional managers filed in. The table, sleek and modern, reflected the professionalism of the organization. Richard stood at the head, his posture commanding respect, but his expression approachable. As the managers settled into their seats, their expressions a mix of curiosity and trepidation, Richard began. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his tone warm but direct. "I've called this meeting because yesterday's events have given me a lot to think about. What happened at the Santa Monica branch wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a larger issue." The room grew quiet, the weight of his words settling over the attendees. As leaders, we've all seen situations where judgment, bias, or poor decisions led to bad outcomes. It's easy to dismiss those moments as anomalies, but we can't afford to do that anymore. Our company's reputation and our mission to serve all clients depend on us holding ourselves to the highest standard. Richard paused, his gaze meeting each manager's eyes before continuing. "That's why I'm introducing a new initiative, Empathy First. This program will focus on teaching our employees how to handle difficult situations with respect, understanding, and professionalism. It's not just about preventing another incident like the one yesterday. It's about creating a culture where every customer and every employee feels valued." The managers exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, while others appeared skeptical. One manager, a middle-aged woman named Karen Rodriguez, raised her hand. "Richard, this is a commendable idea," she began, her voice steady but cautious. "But changing a culture isn't easy. It takes time and, frankly, some people may resist it. How do you plan to make this stick?" Richard smiled faintly. "You're right, Karen. Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. The first step is to ensure that this initiative isn't seen as just another corporate program. It has to start with us. If we, as leaders, embody these principles, they'll trickle down to every level of the organization." Another manager, a younger man named Tom Hargrove, leaned forward. "How will this program be implemented? Are we talking workshops, seminars, online training?" "Great question," Richard replied. "It will be a combination of all three. We'll bring in experts on emotional intelligence and customer service. There will be real-world scenarios for employees to navigate, as well as resources to help them understand the importance of empathy in every interaction. And this isn't just for frontline staff. It's for everyone, including management." Karen nodded thoughtfully, and Tom scribbled notes on a pad of paper. The energy in the room shifted as the managers began to see the potential impact of the program. "I'll be personally overseeing the pilot phase," Richard added. "The Santa Monica branch will be the first to implement it. I want to turn it into a model for how empathy and respect can transform a workplace." The room erupted in murmurs, and Karen raised her hand again. "Does that mean there will be changes to leadership at that branch?" Richard's expression hardened slightly. "Yes. As you may have heard, the former branch manager, Emily Stevens, is no longer with us. Her actions were unacceptable, and they undermined the trust we've worked so hard to build with our clients.